now we can go back to NCS Expert.
Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome back to the Bimmer Barn. I see you guys are really enjoying this E39 528i build series, and I hope that you guys are enjoying this sort of style where I'm not really doing DIYs, but maybe I'm just going more personally with you and building the car and showing you things along the way, hopefully teaching you guys some valuable information at the same time, because really that's what I enjoy doing on this channel, is informing and educating more of the BMW community and helping inspire you guys to work on your own cars, because it's really not that hard, and it's really satisfying when you get to fix something for yourself, save a bit of money, and have that feeling of, you know, having an awesome BMW. So anyways, we've got a lot more work to do on this E39. We're gonna finish up in the engine bay by installing our oil filter and our fresh oil that we need to do, and then I think we're gonna take the air filter off because I do want to clean up the engine bay. We'll probably roll it out at the end when we go to like do our cosmetic work on the car, and we'll get some degreaser in there and get all these oil stains off of the engine bay. But once we get the air filter off, I want to focus on some other cosmetic things. So we're going to pull the headlights out and buff them because I noticed that they're starting to fade at the bottom. And then I want to change the steering wheel out because I have one that's got a really nice leather finish to it and it's not cracking like the old one. And I also want to see if we can code the light control module so that we don't get that Xenon bulb warning anymore on the dashboard. So like I said, I hope you guys enjoy. Leave a like or a comment down below and subscribe to the channel if you're new and you love BMWs like us. And so without further ado, let's get straight to work. So here is the engine, and I'm super happy with how the RTV dried up. You know, it's RTV, so it's got a little bit of rubbery feel to it, but it's glossy. It stuck really well to the valve cover, so I'm pretty certain it's not going to give us a oil leak just from running anymore. So that's fixed up. We can install the harness here, and we also have to put the oil filter in. Someone notably mentioned that, you know, you really should replace these oil filter O-rings, which usually aren't included in oil filter kits. Like this man filter just came with this O-ring and a crush washer. So we're gonna go ahead and replace all these because we're not sure when the last time they were replaced. Probably best to do them during every oil change. And then, yeah, we'll take the air filter off and go from there. Now, what's really nice is with a little bit of magic, I can just go like this. And all of a sudden, our oil pack harness is installed. So now we'll move on, put some green oil in this baby. Green is just such a cool color. It's this Motul stuff. It's cool. Now, I usually like to fill up and do 1 quart less than the fill routine. And that way, you know, you can add the last quart as needed to get it perfectly on the mid of your oil dipstick tube. So if I can get this open, there we go. Then we will add 1 extra quart, leave that quart aside for now until we can run the engine, let it circulate through the car and give us an accurate measurement. But as you can see, I am definitely not the best at freehand pouring, but I also refuse to use a funnel. So this is the only way to learn how to properly pour your oil so people think you look like a pro. Now we'll cap this up right here. I do need to grab a microfiber though and clean that oil. This oil filter, we'll go ahead and pull it out because it should be like 100% dry now. We had the motor just sitting with this thing open for a while. So we'll go ahead and replace those 2 O-rings, this big one, and the filter, of course. And of course you also want to lubricate this big O-ring right here, all of them actually, because as you twist them in, you don't want them to bind up and cause like a leak, because that would be bad. So you lube them up and then install them, and if it was going to bind up somewhere, you could probably see it as well, but this is going in really easy. So I just need to get the socket on top of it and then we'll tighten it down. So So now we can remove this air box, and I want to do that because I want to clean the engine bay like I said, and I'd feel bad just not getting to all this stuff down here. We can also remove the mass airflow sensor to make sure that doesn't get damaged while we are pressure washing the engine bay, and then we'll probably put like a microfiber in the throttle body here to make sure no water gets in the intake. So this is held on by a 10mm. I don't really recognize what brand this is, but it does look pretty nice. Honestly, it has a carbon fiber short ram here. It's got the seal to the hood, so it's technically a cold air intake because you still have the airflow coming from the outside of the car here. But yeah, not a bad setup. We do not have the original intake box, unfortunately, so I probably would install the factory air box if I had the chance, but this is fine. I think the next owner will enjoy it as well. Get a couple extra free horsepower out of there. Wink wink. But anyways, yeah, let's pull it off. 10mm, and then hose clamp and pull it straight up. Well, that was kind of dirty. Go ahead and put that in there so I don't forget later. And now we're gonna go ahead and pull off the headlights because like I said, we want to polish them up and make them look brand new. So as you can see, I don't know why the oxidation started like this, but it kind of just started to run along the bottom of the headlight here, and it's pretty noticeable from outside the car. But scratching it with my finger, I do see that it's just on the exterior, so that means that we can definitely buff it out and get a perfect clear finish again. We're gonna use the same process as we did when I installed the Xenon projectors on my E46, so if you want a little more detail about it, you can check there. But basically, throw some 2000 grit on this, try to make it smooth and level, and then a microfiber pad with some compound, and it'll buff it right out. So let's go ahead and do that now. I have a little transformation for you guys. All right, now I'm noticing that some of the ghosting, like some of that marking is staying in there. So this could mean one of two things. Either one, it's on the other side of the glass here, of the, the lens cover, and that means I couldn't buff it out. Or number two is that it's just deeper pitting than I can feel, and it needs to be sanded down much further, which means that the 2000 grit isn't working, and I would need to go down to like maybe an 800, maybe a 1000, and work up from there and then buff it out. But we're gonna try to buff it out now and see what happens because I'm very curious, and I do not have any more besides the 2000 to sand these headlights. So if I have to go out and get more sandpaper, I will, but let's try it out first and see what kind of results we get. Well, that really answers my question. You can see some areas where I went a little bit heavier and spent more time sanding, definitely clear, and then some areas still have a little bit of ghosting. So it's definitely on the surface. Looks better already, obviously. I mean, compared to before and after, definitely better. But I think I'm gonna go ahead and run to the auto store right now, grab some more levels of wet sanding paper, maybe something that starts at like a 1000, and just spend a little bit more time because I think these things will look perfect with just a little bit more work. So let me go do that. We'll do a little more sanding, and then I'll show you guys what these things look like. All right, there's 800 grit, and you can see most of the shadowing is gone. You can see here, it almost looks like this has been repainted before. So maybe I was going through the repainted clear coat on these headlights, and that's what's kind of making it a little bit more difficult to polish than other ones. But yeah, now we're gonna go to 1000, 1500, and 2000. And just like that, after some good old-fashioned compounding, the headlight looks brand new. Can't even see that ghosting anymore. If there is anything, it's on the other side of the lens, but it looks great. I mean, seriously, like from a foot away, from 5 feet away, it looks just crystal clear. So we're gonna go ahead and put these two side by side. I'll show you the new versus the old. Then we'll make this thing look great as well. And then I'd like to get into changing the steering wheel because this thing definitely needs some attention. All right, these things look great now, and what I'm realizing after spending a little more time with them is it looks like we have some sort of like resistor for the ballast here. So it was just kind of like flopping around here. At first I didn't think much of it, but now I'm realizing this is definitely the like resistor that goes to the ballast, which I'm thinking that they were trying to use in order to get that fault to turn off on the dashboard. So I don't think that we need to install this. I'm just gonna go ahead and put it aside, but we'll reinstall these headlights when we get back to the engine bay. For now, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the steering wheel. And let me show you the one that I got at the junkyard. Here's the steering wheel, recovered from the junkyard, cost me $13, and it came with a clock spring. Now this is my spare wheel. You saw in the previous episode where we were building my M5 wagon, I used a new steering wheel that came with a clock spring, and it was also bad, just like my original clock spring. So I'm gonna take this thing off because I'm not sure what condition it's in, if it's good or bad, and we're probably gonna install it on the M5. But for now, we're going to use the actual leather piece to swap onto the 528i, so that way we don't have that dry leather anymore. So this is held on by a couple of T30 bolts. Just need to grab a ratchet and grab them, and then there's a 16mm bolt behind the airbag that holds the wheel to the steering column. Once you've done that, you can pull it off, and then we'll be installing this in no time. Oh, and by the way, guys, remember when you're removing your airbag to go ahead and disconnect your battery first, because otherwise you might end up with an airbag fault, and nobody wants an unnecessary fault on their car. Am I right, guys? Come on. And you know what? Actually, there's a clip I always forget about. It's the one underneath here. We're gonna go ahead and grab a Phillips head screwdriver, untwist it, try to get that clip out, and then we'll be able to pull down this little steering column cover. And then there's two connectors for the airbag and for the buttons that we need to disconnect under there. Once you do that, then you can remove this bolt and pull them straight off. Well, that's one way to do it, I guess. I wouldn't recommend this generally. I disconnected the battery early, and now we're gonna have to recoil that little ribbon, but I think that the clock spring should still work after we just recoil that, because all that is a data transfer cable, so it's not actually part of the assembly. It can easily go back in and out, so we'll go ahead and reinstall that. But yeah, if you can, you want to lower and bring the steering column as far out as possible, and that's going to let you get this out of the way and get more room, because here I don't have a lot of room to get these connectors. But let me get them, and then we'll pull the wheel out. Yep, it's a good thing I was just doing this last week on my M5, because it makes it easy to remember how these things come undone. Oh, okay. Well, it's never even been changed before because it's still zip tied up there. Let me go ahead and grab a knife, cut that zip tie, and then we'll be able to pull it out. See, good as new. So here we can see the new one that we have compared to this old one. This is just fully cracked up. This is just ready to let go of life itself. And this one's in much better condition. Definitely could use a little bit of cleaning up, but otherwise the leather's in one piece. It's not cracked and it's not tearing either. So we're gonna go ahead and flip this around because we know that this clock spring is, or was, good. And this one we are still curious about. So we have to transfer it over, and it looks like there's just 3 little T10 screws. We'll just transfer it over and then install the wheel. All right, actually, before we reinstall this wheel, I just remembered we do have that weird steering wheel issue where it just seems loose. Let's see if, okay. Is that a bearing in there? So let's take a look. I think it's a bearing that separated in here. So it looks like some sort of bearing in here that's failed, that's causing this play in the steering wheel, literally all the way up here.
Eventually.
Well, it looks like it's a plastic bearing that would go there. So I'm wondering how difficult it would be to remove it. Obviously, there's this spacer here. Don't think that the spacer is gonna come out this way. So probably the spindle would have to come out this way, and then you'd be able to have access to that. But in order to get the spindle out, there's obviously a lot more. All right, so I mean, it probably wouldn't be too difficult. I wonder how that bearing is, if it's pressed in or not, but it looks like the lower shaft would just kind of get disconnected under the footwell here, and then you'd probably be able to pull this straight up, and then at that point you'd need the bearing to replace it, and the bearing actually has like 2 small gaps here and on the bottom where you could just get like a pry bar and pry it straight forward. It is made out of plastic, so I don't think it's gonna be like press fit in there or anything, but yeah, that is definitely the cause of our steering wheel play. So it's not going to get much worse than that. I mean, the bearing's still in there, and honestly, I don't have the time to get into this, but I'll definitely make a note of it so the next buyer is aware. Obviously, I mean, if you wanted to exacerbate the problem, you can sit here and play with it, but otherwise in normal driving you won't notice it, and it's pretty easy. Small cheap parts to replace, and if you want to put your priorities on that when you buy the car, then more power to you. For now, we're going to go ahead and reinstall our wheel, put that back on here, and then we'll get into coating the car. So this is my favorite part of all this, is just going like that, and all of a sudden everything is done for me. So the wheel's installed. I think that we need to connect the battery next, and then we're going to code the light control module. But the problem is that this is a 97 or 98 model car, so it actually has an OBD port, and it has one of these circular ports up here. Now, I showed you guys a video on how to hack this thing to enable full OBD access inside the car, and that's exactly what we have to do now really quickly in order to get this thing up to par so that we can code the light control module, because otherwise I'd have to connect the circular connector up here, and I don't feel like doing that. So we'll go ahead and grab my cap from my M5 wagon and copy the same thing on this one. So there we have it, the M5 cap next to the 528i cap. So we see that we just have to bridge those 2 outer pins. So I'm going to grab some solder, flux, and a wire really quick, and then we'll be coating in no time. Well, that wasn't too difficult, and now we should just be able to reinstall this, and we'll be able to code or access any module from inside the car without using an adapter up here. It's one of my favorite little hacks to do. If you haven't done it yet, go check out my video. All right, so actually before we start up the computer and start coding, I've temporarily hooked up the headlights, but this time without those transistors that were between the ballast and the high beam. So now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and put the key in. Let's see what lights work and just make sure that we don't have any actual bad bulbs, and that way we can get into coding the errors out. All right, so it's showing us 2 bad low beam bulbs, I believe, but let's go ahead and turn on the headlights, and we'll also turn on the high beams, and finally the turn signals, and let's go see which ones work. Looks like everything is good on this side. Everything is good on this side as well. I do believe that the let's turn the headlights off. Let's turn everything off, and now let's see if we can get the angel eyes. Looks like the angel eyes are working on this side and on this side. Okay, so knowing that all these bulbs work, we can go ahead and scan the fault codes and see that, you know, it's probably just looking for a xenon. So let's go ahead and pull the computer out. And actually, look at this. After turning the headlights on, the bulb warnings actually go off. So I'm pretty sure, confident that these are the low beam xenons that are giving us a fault, but let's confirm. So we're gonna go ahead and connect this K plus DCAN cable. I just got this off of Amazon recently, and it has the switch in it, so it'll work on a lot of different models, new and old. But we'll go ahead and connect this up here, and then we're gonna try loading up ISTA and seeing if we can find these fault codes on the dashboard. We'll go to operations and read out vehicle data and see if this cable works. Sweet. It's starting to read the VIN and all the engine data, all that. So it looks like our OBD hack worked, and our new cable that we got from Amazon works great as well. So we'll wait for this to load up, and then we need to head to the light control module. All right, so we got a successful fault reading. See one fault in the light control module, and it says it's for unknown bulb. But I'm thinking, I saw the lights flicker on the dashboard a second ago. I'm thinking the battery might be dying. So we're gonna have to be pretty quick here, and I think I'm gonna grab some jump cables to go from the M3 to the 528i. That way we have extra amperage to do the coding in a second. But I'll do that, and then we're gonna go to NCS Expert, and we're gonna change some functions up, and hopefully these faults will go away. All right, now we should have enough juice. So I'm gonna start by loading up NCS Dummy. We'll go ahead and leave that running in the background. And then we're gonna go to NCS Expert, gonna load our profile for manipulation. Click start, and then enter the chassis, E39, and we'll read off the EWS, but let me turn on the car first. There you go. And so we'll read out from the EWS, got the VIN, all that. We'll click back, and then we'll click, I think it's process ECU, light control module, and we're going to change the job to code your data and lesson. So we're going to read the coding data and execute that job. And now we should be able to go to our work data folder, let's see, and our trace file here. There you go. So we're going to go ahead and file, save as, we're going to save it as a new file somewhere else. That way, in case we mess up the coding, we can go back to this original file, and we're going to load it. We're going to put it under our documents right here. So in NCS Dummy, we're going to select our LCM C18 and browse for that folder that we were just looking at, the trace folder. So now that we've read the coding file and we're in NCS Dummy, we can go ahead and look for the xenons.
Many hours later.
Well, you know what? After doing some reading on the forums, it looks like the first generation light control modules for the E39 cannot be coded. For Xenon compatibility, you'd have to literally add that programming in. So what we can do is we can disable the bulb checks and see if we can avoid getting a fault on the instrument cluster like that. So we'll go ahead and find the cold, I think, what is it called? The cold monitoring for the low beams. Try to disable that check, and then here it is, active. Let's go ahead and not enable that, and then we'll go ahead and do a export of this file to our .man. And now we can go back to NCS Expert, change the job to coding, and then we're going to execute the job and see if it accepts it. Coding active, coding ended. Oh, what just happened there, guys? You see that? Those lights went off. So now we're going to go ahead and go back to main. And I think we'll just close this out for now. Close out NCS Dummy, Do you want to empty the file? Okay. And now let's go ahead and turn the car off and then back on again. Back on. Turn on our low beams. Low beams are working. And no bulbs. Look at that. So just by disabling the cold monitoring, we don't get a fault code anymore for the low beams. Go ahead and turn these off. And look at that. That was very, very easy. So just like that, our coding is done. Super easy. Thank you, NCS Expert, for letting us do that. And now we can cross some things off the list here. So I already crossed off a couple things from the previous episode, but we'll go ahead and say that the steering wheel, you know, we diagnosed that. We coded the LCM and we did the headlight buffing. You know what? Let's go ahead and knock off one more thing while we're here, the shift knob. And that's because I'm going to go ahead and make a sacrifice here. First, I need to take these things off. Dang, they're a little warm. They had some juice flowing through there, I guess, huh? But this car, this 318, is gonna make one more sacrifice for us. Let's go ahead and grab that shift knob. Now, the reason we have to put this thing on is because the one inside the car right now, it literally is just falling apart and it literally won't stay on the car itself. I'm a little disappointed because I do kind of like this knob. It's like a blacked out knob. Dang, it looks pretty good. But we'll go ahead and see, it just comes off, no problem. Take that off, put this thing on. Oh, there's a little bit. See, it's falling apart and there's some still in there. There you go, that's much better. Take this, go like that, boom. Now it's not gonna fall off. This thing, it's falling apart already, so don't need that anymore. Looks better. I don't know, it doesn't match too well, but I'd rather have something that sticks on there than something that's just gonna fall off when you try to put it in second gear. So we'll leave that like that for now, and I think that's gonna conclude today's video. So it's the end of the day here, and we're gonna conclude the video here. Got a lot done today, but we still have a lot more work to do. It's looking like this might be like a 4-part series. I know at first I said it was gonna be like a 2-part series, then it was gonna be like a 3-part series, but the next time that you see us working on this car, we're gonna be taking care of the engine bay. So we need to basically get the car back on the ground. The mechanical work is done. We have a couple of cosmetic things left to do on it. I do wanna check the alignment as well, but most importantly, I wanna get some spray paint for the rear wing, get that peeled off, repaint it, and put it back on. And then we need to fully detail the engine bay as well, because that thing is disgusting. But I feel like if we use the right brushes and degreaser, we'll be able to get all that cleaned off. Pressure wash it as well to get all the dirt out of there, and then the engine bay will be looking a lot better. We'll give the car a good wash as well, and hopefully this thing will be looking like brand new in no time. So if you enjoy this series so far, guys, please let me know with a like or a comment down below. If you're new to the channel and this is your first time seeing us here at the Bimmer Barn, consider giving us a subscribe, and as always, I hope everyone has an awesome day. We'll see you next time.